Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the newest episode of the Revolution of Being podcast. Today, we are going to just kind of piggyback off of last week's episode and talk about what everybody is talking about, and that is the post election from November 5th. This is a topic that I probably will assume the entire globe is talking about at this point. And there's a lot of information floating around out there. There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of people that are getting twisted up in different narratives. And there's a lot of separation. And it's this separation that's really kind of a hot topic for me personally. So to just kind of launch the conversation on this, Angie, I just want to let our viewers know from a standpoint of what I do professionally, I've worked in the small business coaching consulting arena for just over 5 years as an entrepreneur. And my mission has always been to bring harmony into the business world. But what I started to learn pretty early on was that things were shifting at a tremendous pace. People were shifting. And one of the earliest things that I had done before the global pandemic was a keynote called Purpose Over Passion. I talk about this a lot. I started to realize that people were really starting to fix themselves to their purpose. And it's kind of crazy how much and how quickly that went in exactly that direction. I believe, my opinion is the times of being handcuffed, golden handcuffed to money, benefits, 401ks, and all these things that were kind of the machine, the beast of corporate America. Those days are slowly and quickly kind of dissipating. It's coming in stages. So I believe that what we're walking through right now is just another phase of that. And I've been telling business owners for quite a long time that if you want to remain relevant in the world in the future, you have to start to develop yourself, build your self-awareness as a leader, and start to really figure out what you are as a business owner, who you are, what you sell, and why. How you serve is what it comes down to. And I think the polarization or this division that we're seeing kind of folds into that whole thing. So we have this election that took place, and I don't know. I thought it was going to be a lot more volatile in the moment. I'm sure you can agree to that. Uh, we kind of experienced like this. It's done. I mean, they were saying election results weren't going to be out for a couple days, and it started to fuel this. Why does it take so long to count votes? All this stuff. And then it was over. And now it's been really kind of oddly silent, but we're seeing this ever growing number of people that are polarizing to different sides.
Yeah.
And I think this is, again, just kind of a living example of what we've seen overall. So, what are your what are some of your immediate thoughts or takes on this? Because it's wild.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think what we're seeing is the micro and the macro reflecting back on each other, right? So, in your beautiful kind of conversation about business owners really being a reflection, outward and having to really tune into their purpose, their passion, people on an individual level are being called to do the same. What's in highest alignment with me right now? What's in highest alignment with my values? Um, Looking at things and saying, what is the actual truth here? As we know, unfortunately, truth is a very subjective thing. We can say objectively 1 plus 1 is 2. There are certain objective things, but when it comes to values, to politics, to spirituality, to so many things, it really is a very individual process. And to bring it down to, this idea of truth is also a very subjective thing in the respect of a person's lived experiences. And that I think is what is hard when we see the division is that people are really getting into fight flight. So we know, I do subconscious mindset work. So I teach people this in terms of, through the process of coaching, but also in the hypnotherapy realm of experiencing and exposing subconscious beliefs. So what we're seeing is this collective kind of shadow work unfolding where people's wounds are coming forth. And unfortunately, there's been so much psychological warfare where people's wounds are just being picked at even deeper, which is making them contract even more. And those that are maybe on a more curious path of like what's actually happening here are beginning to kind of transcend that and see like there's other stuff going on. Um, and that there really is this insidious underbelly of tension being created to continue to polarize. When people are in unity, these agendas can't continue. And so it's so interesting to watch it and say, from a lens of as much neutrality as we can get, right? Like this is wild to see it unfold. And I will use an example of a conversation I had recently where I had spoken with someone who had very strong views in the realm of Democrat, and that's okay. Like I honor where everybody's at from all sides. I do try to stay neutral with this and just observe everyone's perspectives because they're all valid for stuff. And I could see the wounding of their lived experiences and how much, I'm going to call it propaganda, how much propaganda was feeding into those fears, igniting them, and further allowing that person to say, yes, this is exactly why. This is why I'm voting this way. This is why this party is in favor of my values. And if you're not in this party, you're racist, you're sexist, you don't believe in women's rights. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I had just profound compassion, and I debriefed with you after that conversation because I was like, oh my goodness, I saw from a different lens how trauma is being exploited through these agendas. People's, inability to understand the power they have. And, I think even more of what we're being guided into is understanding our power. It doesn't lie on whether you're a Democrat or Republican or a libertarian or independent. It really is in the sovereignty of each individual person. Regardless of what's happening around you, we all have the power to create our own experience, to take control of our lives. And, I know there's a lot of people who are going to say, well, I don't have control because my state is pro-life. And that's tough, right? You're in a situation where if that's a value that you hold, the conversation then becomes, do you move, and that's something I can't answer for people. But I think this idea of repression, of rights of humans is what we're going to blow the top off of. We all have sovereignty, we all have choice in every single moment of our day, and I think that's one of the things we learn when we have a spiritual awakening is we create our own reality, and that's not to say we're not affected by what's happening around us. But, Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, if you haven't read that, pick it up and read it because it is the most powerful example of you can be in the most atrocious experiences and still decide to choose how you show up. And the background for those aren't familiar is he was um, someone who was in concentration camps, and he kind of outlined his experiences and seeing how he was able to choose um, his attitude, choose his perspective in every ounce of this, journey he had. And then he would see others who went into complete victimhood and just the chaos that ensued. And I think what we're seeing is the fear that's unraveling isn't truth. If you're in a state of fear, you're not living in truth. And I'm going to call that, and people are going to get really fucking pissed, and I'm going to trigger you, and that's fine. Sit with that. Because the truth of us as humans to the core are we are love. We are love. We are light. Everything else that isn't that is not the absolute truth of God, of this universe, of nature, of man. And the polarity, the powers that be understand. How do you keep people small? You keep them in fear. You keep them out of their light, out of their power. So if anything, I could rant about this for a while. If anything, it's an opportunity. If you are feeling triggered, if you are feeling like your life is topsy-turvy right now with the outcome of the election, is where is the power you have right now? In this moment, is your life good? Right now in this moment, are you safe? Right now, in this moment, do you have food on your table? Because you are so much further ahead than many countries. And
Yep.
that's not to say let's compare and talk privilege and rights. Like we are a very lucky nation with so many opportunities we have here. And this idea that we're repressed to me is just bananas. It really is. And again, it's going to piss some people off, but sit down and in the moment, right now, evaluate your surroundings because I guarantee it's not as bad as the propaganda you're being spit, fear mongering and telling you all these things are going to change. Moreover, I remember in 2016, I wasn't yet awake enough to kind of understand the propaganda machine. And I definitely had some concerns when I woke up and found out that Trump was going to be president. That's where I was at that time. And even though I wasn't where I am now, I remember saying, you know what, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. And
Mhm.
the peace that it brought me versus going into this fear and this anger of, we hate women, we don't want a woman in the, presidency, whatever, like all these stories that were circulating. I had such peace being like, let's just see what happens. And you know what? I don't recall it being terrible. I mean, nothing in my life changed so drastically. I remember getting more money in my paycheck because taxes were changed. That was lovely. But nothing in my life changed so drastically that it was terrible. So I encourage people to look at what's unfolding with a sense of curiosity, with a sense of openness that it might not, you and I are believers that everything is happening for us regardless of what the outside appearance is. Everything that's shaking out is for our highest good. And I will stand on that hill until the day I die. Everything that's unfolding is unfolding for us, including this. So, again, wherever you stand in this process, just be curious. Just wonder, like, okay, what could go right here? Like, what
Yeah.
are the ways that this could actually be okay? Versus being fed information from media that is highly biased. And I saw something online this morning, and it really was so powerful. This is where a lot of people are really wanting decentralized news. Love him or hate him, people like Joe Rogan for that. He doesn't follow a standard script. People like Tucker Carlson because he left the propaganda machine and recognized I want to source information that's true. I don't want to be fed through the lens of bias.
Wow.
Candace Owens, and people, again, they're very strong figures and that triggers people. But people are really moving towards this decentralized way of receiving information and moving forward. And again, that comes back to sovereignty, recognizing your sovereignty as a spiritual being on this planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that you kind of summarized that really, really well. We have been, I think prior to 2016 for sure, it was a collective, almost an entire collective echo chamber. We turned on our 5 o'clock news, we read the newspaper, we heard the same narratives over and over again. That is really what our world was. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can call it the Matrix if you want. If you remember the movie, everybody's like plugged into the same program, and then you unplug it and you're like, whoa, like holy. And I remember back in 2016, I've been a tinfoil hat wearer for probably, I could probably say, my entire life at different levels. I mean, as a child, it's weird. I don't know how you find that stuff when you're in the early 90s and you're checking out books at the library. It's like, how do you even know? I have no idea. But I've always kind of been really interested in the oddities, right? The people that were saying something that didn't go with the story we were being told. And I remember those moments with church as well. So I remember it with food. I remember it with religion. I remember it with politics. And it's like it came in phases for me. And what is wild, Angie, is that everything is everything we're talking about now. Back then, I was the weirdo. I talked about this weird stuff for a long time. And I recall the very first election I could vote in. And this will just tell everyone my age, but it was Al Gore and George Bush. It was the first time I got to exercise that right to cast my vote. And it was a very strange time in history. If you look back in the history books, I don't think a lot of people are talking about it anymore, but it was so relevant to me because I voted in this. But I remember looking at both candidates and having this pit in my tummy saying, neither, like something felt really wrong. I was a conservative, I guess. I didn't know what I was. I just knew that I wanted like the right things, and I couldn't look at either one and really kind of settle that in my soul. And then lo and behold, there was this whole kerfluffle with the whole election, and we had all these hanging chads and all this stuff, and it was a very odd election cycle. And I just remember thinking, that's oddly validating. because none of it felt right. And I think ever since then, I've been very highly skeptical of this system that we call our government. I believe it is the same bird, just two different wings. And
Mhm.
everybody's been in bed with everybody. And and so I'm not going to sit here and say that I feel as though we are doomed. I think that that is an ego statement. I think if you're going to look at everything and think there's nothing good here for us, you are a ship in your own sea. You can't do anything here. I don't believe that to be true. I believe the course of events will always work in our highest good. And we are all interconnected. So when I say our highest good, I don't mean just mine or just yours. I mean collectively, but we have free will. So we all get a choice. We get to choose. And so this whole thing, this whole idea of fear, this whole idea of oppression, I'm going to just say it. It's victimhood. It's victimhood. You're being a victim. You're being the worst kind of victim. Everybody's doing this to me. You're just being a victim. I don't play that game. It's the one thing I literally cannot tolerate. Nobody's doing anything to you. You are the creator of your own destiny. And you can continue to live a life where you are a victim to every circumstance. Guess what? If your rights are so powerful, nobody under any circumstance can take them away from you. Can you be victimized? Yes. You can be victimized, but only while you're ignorant, only while you don't know. Children can be a victim. Handicapped people can be a victim. But conscious thinking, choosing beings, like you said, I read a book very similar to yours. It was called The Choice. It was by Edith Egar. Excellent book, another Holocaust survivor. It's funny, there are a lot of lessons that come out of that time period. This whole story, I'm sure, I haven't read the book that you recommended, but maybe we should do a swapsy. Um, she tells the story about her time. I think she was in Auschwitz. I can't remember exactly, so don't quote me on that, but she was in a concentration camp. Her family was separated. Her parents were killed. Her and her sister were together for a while, then they were separated. And it was just this storyline. But every day she got up and she made a choice under the worst possible circumstances. She was telling stories about her and her sister pretending they were eating the most delicious meal that their mom had cooked and like feeling that and enjoying that. And she would talk about like just hearing a bird sing, right? It was a choice every day. And she would tell herself every single day, I just got to survive another day. And every day that was her thing. And she ended up almost dying, was rescued by German or American soldiers. And she went on to become a psychologist, and really just a fascinating story. But again, you always have a choice. So I'm just going to call it out, Angie. I don't know. Maybe this will get taken down, but when you see what's happening out there, I don't care, right or left. I don't care. There are extremes. And you see people on these far extremes, and you see people that are doing radical, offensive things. I mean, we have swung so far that we are screaming about our rights while actively like putting people down who have very much lost. I mean, look at the women in Iran. The women in Iran are tougher than some of the women I've seen in this country. Now,
Mhm.
those women are taking a stand because what they understand. So here's the difference, ladies. Here's the difference. Those women over there will die. And they're still standing up and saying, I'll die for it. I'll die for the sovereign being I know I am. While we have women here who have lost no rights, saying, I will kill you for my delusion.
Mhm.
I'm just going to call it for what it is. And it's that kind of level of person. I believe what we're going to see, and maybe flag this as like something to look back on. I think we are going to see a separation. And those fringe things are going to find their middle ground. And it's those people in the middle that are going to have peace and a knowing that even though somebody could physically take things, material things, they could make a law and put it on paper and do whatever, we know they can never take our sovereignty or our rights because nobody gave them to us.
Right. And
That's the
even
platform we need to stand on.
And within that, you're also not a victim because there is a massive movement of people who are becoming sovereign. They're like, I don't want to participate in this, system anymore. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to fund a government that I believe is so corrupt. There are resources, people. There are so many people out there who are heading this movement. So if you truly feel like your rights as a human are being taken away, maybe go check out Becoming Sovereign, and you're going to Google it and they're going to say it's a bunch of quackadoos who, this is like a conspiratorial movement. You and I personally know several people who have done this. They are very intelligent humans. They are very, very high quality people. They are not idiots. They are not tinfoilers who, are spitting out insane information. I mean, they are people doing their research. So if you really think this is not a place you want to be, that's an option. You can become sovereign. You do your own research. You can also choose to move, and it's like you can go somewhere else, or you can continue to stay here, sow the seeds of love, compassion, unity, and allow this transformation to happen in a way that's empowering. Because again, I had made a post that was an empowering post about, either you want something or you don't. It's up to you to choose the life you want. And there was a person who commented that it's a privileged statement to say that, and I was like, that's so interesting. That's so interesting that you believe that it's a privilege to choose. All of us have the right to choose. The
Mhm.
difference is that varying levels of consciousness, people may not be there yet to understand. And I'm going to say I hold compassion for that, right? Because if you're at a level of consciousness where you're just not quite understanding how this all works together, you're probably not going to see that. So I'm not throwing shade to people who are not there. Although I know people that are very brilliant who are still getting into victimhood. And I'm like, it's so interesting to see this play out. And, I wanted to engage in a conversation because I personally know someone who, before the age of 15, was assaulted, had 2 children, was from not this country, came to this country illegally, and sought refugee here, homeless, had nothing to show as I think, 15, 16-year-old with 2 young children, created a multi-million-dollar business, had to learn English. Okay. So it's not, well, you have privilege because you had a parent, you had privilege because you're white. Absolutely not. It's wanting to take control of your destiny and wanting something so badly that you are willing to do whatever the fuck it takes to make your life better. And this person had a hell of a why, and it was their children. And the parents out there, most of us would do anything for our kids. And again, to say it's a privilege, I'm going to call bullshit, because there are plenty of people who have shown that you can do whatever you want, and again, different levels of consciousness, and maybe you're not there yet where you're still engaging in that, and that's okay. But just get curious. And I think that is the thing, at the end of the day. And this was a conversation I had this weekend with a person who was really, really triggered about what was happening. At the end of the day, I don't say my political affiliations whatsoever. I try to stay neutral, but I do, of course, I sway a certain direction for sure. I'm still human. I still observe what's happening and make a decision, or at least say this feels a little bit better than the other options. However, with this person, I had said, but what if you sat down with another person with a different view? Because at the end of the day, all of us want safety. All of us want to feel free. All of us want to live a prosperous and healthy life. That is not party dependent. Like, that is not a left or a right issue. That's a human thing. That's a human right. And, we want to demonize another side or assume that we're also different, but we're not. That is the propaganda machine making people hate each other. And that was something we saw in COVID. And, that was my awakening. So I was kind of a part of the people who, was not yet aware of what was happening. And I fed into it and I was very fearful. But I remember seeing a meme on social media and it made so much sense. And I may have said this in another episode, but you put a jar of black ants and red ants together, they will commingle like nothing else. They don't care. They're just chilling, doing their little ant things, having a blasty blast. And then someone shakes the jar, and suddenly these ants, red versus black, just start attacking each other. And the question is, who's shaking the jar? Because
Mhm.
it's not us as people that are inherently bad. There are powers at play that know how magnificent we are, that if we stepped into our power, they wouldn't have a chance, you know? And again, it's if you're so, just completely appalled by what's happening in the world, there are a lot more of us than there are government officials. So
Mhm.
you always have a choice. Always organize, be smart. I'm not saying to do anything stupid here, but I'm just saying like there's always a choice. And we think that these little people up in the ivory towers have all this control. They don't. It's a fucking illusion. It's the Wizard of Oz behind the, smoke screen. It's all a fucking illusion to make people feel helpless. And you and I are like, I'm fucking sick of that shit. Like, I'm not going to buy into that narrative. And not that I don't have my own little moments of pity parties for sure. I'm still human. I have hard days. At the end of the day, though, I ultimately know like my life is my responsibility. No one else's. No one else's. And that is what we need to come to. And I think, just like COVID, whatever's coming is going to shake a lot of people awake. And if you're not awake yet, you're going to be suffering, and that's okay. Because sometimes it has to get so painful for us to change. And that is often what it takes is it has to get so painful where you are thrown into the dark night of the soul, and you can either continue into this dark rabbit hole of misery, or you can be like, there's got to be another way. Those are the clients that you and I work with, the people that are like, I'm fucking sick of it. There's got to be a different way. And it's like, yes, there is. Welcome. Like, let us help you feel empowered. Let us help you understand the choices you truly have at hand. And you with business owners, like how to rise above, that's such important work. Business owners have such a powerful influence on people. And when they're empowered, when they're in their sovereignty, the difference it can make as a world. And it is, be the change you want to see in this world. This isn't we're going to throw our beliefs at you and hope it sticks, because you're going to go right into your ego. All of us will when we're attacked. We go into our ego and we get into defense mode, and all the critical faculties shut down. We can't have an open conversation. And so trying to like post hateful crap on social media, trying to push your viewpoint isn't getting anybody anywhere. And in fact, I would say shut that shit off. Take a break from social media, from the news, do it for a week and see how your life improves, because I guarantee you'll be a lot happier without being fed. And even in that, you and I do take a pretty neutral approach to politics and to everything. But our algorithms are definitely biased to a certain sway. So it's feeding us more of what it thinks we want to see, which becomes a silo. So that's also something you have to be aware of. Is like, oh well, I pick my news. I'm mindful of what I watch. Bullshit. Have you seen the social media? What is it called? The social experiment. It talks about, it's on Netflix. It talks about the algorithms and how they tag you and know exactly what to feed you based on like what you've searched in the past. There is no unbiased information coming your way. It is completely biased, feeding you more of your beliefs, which further silos you into these corners. You have to be a critical thinker. And this is also the rise up of critical thinking. We were never taught in education how to critically think. And those of us that did, it was like, you're the black sheep. You're the one who's questioning religion early on. We're the
Yeah.
ones questioning the food system. We're the ones questioning why all these toxins are in our environment and why all this stuff's happening, and looking into the Fed and understanding the bullshit behind the Federal Reserve, the Rockefellers, BlackRock. Like, critical thinking people, we are
Yeah.
all very intelligent beings. We just haven't been empowered to understand that yet. Like, everyone listening to this podcast, if you're listening, you are a fucking bright light of intelligence. Otherwise you would not resonate with this content at all. And if
Yeah.
anything in here triggers you, just get quiet with it and ask why it's triggering.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we're
No.
not right.
Yeah. No side is free from this either. So don't think we're sitting here picking on one side over the other. I see it on both sides. I see it in the middle ground. I see it everywhere. I've been a subject to it as well. It's whatever you're attached to, and I think that's where we see people get unhinged. They've bought so hard into what they're being fed, and they are being fed it. This is classic gaslighting. This is, oh, I know it looks like this but it's not. And people are just like hook, line, and sinker. In fact, sometimes they're very intelligent people, but it's so much more comfortable. So like what you said was, the pain of staying has to become greater than the pain of change. And that's where our little human brains and psyches need to go oftentimes to make a change. That's why you see people hit the rock bottom and finally decide that it's going to be better walking into the unknown. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think we're going to see a lot of people hit rock bottom. And I think, if I can make a little bit of a prediction, I think we're going to have another wave of people that are just kind of getting cold shocked awake a little bit to the reality of it. And it's not the journey everybody's going to take. Not everybody is going to choose to, I guess you could say, take the red pill. I don't know. I'll go back to the Matrix theme, but it basically to just know something, because once you know it, there is no like going backwards.
Hmm.
It's now everything is different. And that is really hard for people. I've witnessed it. I've had a lot of pulling away in my own life of people who are just like, nope, staying right here. This is where I'm comfortable, and nope. And I think that's a very hard thing. So what I experienced in 2020 was this overwhelming desire, need, pull to advocate. So I live in a county in Wisconsin. So Wisconsin had a really different experience than a lot of the nation when it came to COVID restrictions. So while a lot of places stayed shut down for a very long time, we opened up in May of 2020. Our governor, the law found that what he did actually violated a law. So it put an end to his mandate, and it went down to a county level. So this is what's really interesting about this time frame. So I want everybody to think about some of the things that are happening. It was the first greatest lesson for me, because it took the governor out of the picture. I know there was some separation between the government and the Fed, and all of a sudden it was down to the counties. And I saw counties trying to do their own mandates, and they would work. And then it came to my county, and I'm like, hold on a second. What are they doing? And it started to shed light. And very long story short, it taught me that our power lies within the communities. The federal government shouldn't have that much power.
Hmm.
And so now here we are in a tizzy about things up here when we should be more worried about things right here.
100%. And you hit the nail on the head, and I think that is what so many people are feeling right now is this desire to really build community. That's not to say it's excluding people at all. It's not like these little, again, silos of people that are like-minded, but moreover, people coming together and saying, like, we need to step up in support of all of ourselves, and really be the voice to policy change that we want, be the voice to things we're willing to stand up for and things we're unwilling to tolerate. And, I know so many people who in the last few months, and I bet you do as well, who are like, I feel within me the strong need to build community now. I know a lot of people who are feeling the strong pull to build naturopathic kind of wellness centers now. I mean, we are in this stage of labor as a collective where we are all birthing new things. And on the other side of this, again, I think there will be kind of a split where those that are doing the work, those that are awake, are going to be having a very different lived experience than those who are not there. And that's not to say, again, we don't wish bad upon anybody. People are going to have their own journey for the purposes they need to. But I think we're going to see a continued separation of these lived experiences. And someone had explained it to me in a way of almost like looking through a plate glass window, like seeing the other side, but maybe they can't quite see in, or they can, but they're like, I don't know how you're doing what you're doing over there, because over here it's hell. And we're like,
Mhm.
I don't know how you're doing that over there, because over here we're like, it's good. And that comes down to choice. Do you want the red pill or the blue pill? Are you willing to wake up and challenge every single fucking belief you have? Because that's what this is. And it is terrifying. When I had my awakening, it was, I liken it to the Miss Doubtfire scene for those of us who are old enough to remember that, where the mom, finds out the dad was actually Miss Doubtfire and she's like, the whole time. And I had that moment of like, the whole fucking time this was in front of me. How did I not see this? And it was just like this complete and utter anger. I was so fueled by anger, and anger is a powerful and not bad emotion because it catalyzed me to learn. It catalyzed me to continue being like, if I was wrong about this, holy shit, what else have I been wrong about? And to the point where even this morning I was texting you, I was walking on the treadmill and I was texting you about everything going on. And I was like, I am fully in surrender to the fact that I may be wrong about everything. All of this, everything I think I believe could be completely wrong, and that's okay. And what a beautiful place to be, because I'm not going to stick my heels in the ground. And people have said, have kind of called bullshit on that and wanted to kind of hate on me for taking neutrality. But it's like, I have my opinions and beliefs, and I'm challenging them all the fucking time. So I refuse to say this is the way it has to be, because again, as information's coming forth, I'm constantly discerning. And I think that is also what people are really being called to do, is tap into discernment. Because
Yeah.
again, all of our truths are very different. Your lived experience is going to lend a very different worldview to you. And,
Mhm.
one of the things I had heard on a podcast he talked about was, to the person who is pro choice, they may have been someone who, had a really terrible experience and needed, unfortunately, to have an abortion. That was the best choice they had, but yet, people want to judge them for being pro choice. And likewise, to the person who wants to have the right to bear arms, they may have been assaulted and desperately want to protect themselves because they feel so unsafe. So you can't just take at face value that people on one side or the other are racist or are, too religious or are this, that, and the other. It's like people have their lived experiences, which are shading how they're seeing all of this play out. And
Yeah.
again, all we can do is continue to walk forward, just like, the book you reference. Like, all we have to do is just take it day by day. We literally cannot even like try to plan for the future because so much is up in the air. I mean, yes, make your investments and do your intelligent things. I'm not saying like don't be smart about some of that stuff, but moreover, when it comes to everything unfolding, we have no idea. We have no fucking clue what's going to happen. And to get in your get your panties in a bunch about project, was it 2025 or 2030, whatever the hell. Like, people literally think we're going to be living out this just extreme Handmaid's Tale experience. It's like, no, what? As far as what I'm seeing, that's not happening at all. And if it does, there will be a motherfucking revolution. I mean,
Well, and
COVID.
yeah, let's just set that straight right here. Project 2025 is birthed by the Heritage Foundation. It's a right wing conservative think tank. They do it every election. Obama instituted the CARES Act through it. Reagan instituted another act. They all pick and choose from this. Now, the left side has their own. They have their own liberal think tank. And so all these are just an amalgamation. They always have been. It's a bunch of the doesn't matter. It's just
Mhm.
propaganda. It's always been
Correct.
there. And it's always going to be there so long as we keep buying into the infighting.
Hmm.
So 2020 to me, 2016 to 2020 was a time we were being called to start talking about things. I mean, there was some purpose behind the meme wars and whatever. It was more of a call to get people awake. It
Hmm.
created vision, but it also woke a lot of people up to things that were happening, like sex trafficking. Oh my goodness. What?
Yeah.
Celebrities? All these things. But here's what I want to tell people. That time, in my opinion, has passed. That time has passed. You're not going to shake somebody awake. That is going to happen through the evolution of everything to come. And it's not your job. It's not your responsibility. I believe my responsibility, and I know other people agree with me, is to now show up as an example.
Yep.
Just walk the path. Show that you can be in a place of neutrality, observation. You don't need to scream what your beliefs are. You don't need to do that. You don't need to defend them. show up in the way that you would want to see the world behave towards one another. And that means I see you over there being all crazy, and I'll protect myself, but I'm not going to attack you.
Right.
It's on both sides. And the people that are going to bring something better forward, they're going to be the ones that are like, do your thing. I'm going to be right here. I'm going to be in the middle. I'm going to do what's smart for me. I'm going to remain unattached to political ideologies, hopefully unattached to religious ideologies, because man, we would hate to have one religion say another group of people should die because they don't believe the same thing again, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to choose to walk that path of integrity, which is I'm going to be responsible for me. And every single day, I'm going to make a choice. And every single day, I'm going to look at my own world and look at what I do and ask myself, how can I be a servant without being a sacrificial lamb? I'm not going to farm
Yeah.
my energy out. What can I do to help humanity today? And I challenge everybody listening to this, if you're triggered and you made it this far, do that. What a gift you can give back to everybody else. Show up as a servant, right? It's a value exchange. We talk about that all the time. You will get back what you give. You will get back what you give. That's the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been an awesome conversation today. And as always, we welcome feedback. We welcome conversations. We welcome, anything you'd like us to explore more. And disagreements. If you're like, I don't agree, cool. I love that. Like, let's have a conversation about it. So, as always, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Shit, I didn't want to do that. All right.